October 26, 2014 from MetLife Stadium in East Rutherford, New Jersey. It was the Buffalo Bills at the New York Jets. And the Jets started things off in this game, and they would go 3 and out on their first possession. So now Buffalo took over on their own 36 with about 13 and a half left in the first quarter. And they made short work of the field as they went 64 yards in 7 plays in about 4 minutes, capped off by a 22-yard touchdown pass from Kyle Orton to Woods that made it 7-0 Buffalo. Now New York took over on their own 10-yard line with about 9.5 left in the first. And then on 3rd and 8 from the 12, Geno Smith dropped back to pass. He was looking for Percy Harvin, and he was intercepted by Gilmore. And now Buffalo took over on the New York 48 with about 8.5 minutes left. They would go 3 and out, so they punted the ball back to the Jets. So now the Jets took over on their own 20. But then on 3rd and 9, Geno Smith dropped back to pass, and he was intercepted for the second time in this game, this time by Brown, and it was now Buffalo's ball on the 50-yard line with a little over 6 minutes left in the first. Buffalo would go 3 and out yet again after the turnover, and so New York got the ball back after not having really taken too much damage off the pick, and they had it on their own 11-yard line, and then it ended up on 2nd down. Geno Smith dropped back to pass, and he was intercepted. Then on the interception, Williams was running it back for the end zone, and right at the 1-yard line, he dove for the pylon and he fumbled the ball out of bounds. So now the Bills had the ball on the Jets' 1-yard line, and Lee Smith punched it in from a yard out to make it 14-0 Buffalo over New York. So now the Jets took over with about 4.5 minutes left in the first quarter. They had the ball on their own 24. They brought the ball to midfield and into Buffalo territory. And on 3rd and 7 from the 26, Michael Vick, who had now come into the game after those 3 picks by Geno Smith, and Vick hit Curley for a 16-yard pass for the last play of the first quarter as the Jets brought the ball to the Buffalo 10. So after 1, it was Buffalo 14, Jets 0. So now to start things off in the second quarter, the Jets were on the Buffalo 10-yard line. Vick then ran for 8 yards to bring it to the 2. So on 2nd and goal from the 2, Chris Ivory punched it in from 2 yards out, and it was now 14-7 as the Jets had gotten on the scoreboard. So now the Bills would get the ball, and they would start their drive on their own 8-yard line as they were backed up against their own end zone. But they went the length of the field, 92 yards in just 5 plays in 2.5 minutes. Is when it was 3rd and 7 from the 11, Kyle Orton hit Sammy Watkins for an 84-yard pass that brought the ball to the New York 5, and it was 1st and goal. Then on 2nd and goal from the 2, Summers punched it in from 2 yards out, and it was now 21-7 Buffalo over the New York Jets. So now the Jets had the ball on their own 20, and they would go 3 and out. Buffalo would also go 3 and out, and now the Jets got the ball back, and they had it on their own 16 with about 9.5 minutes left in this game. Then it was 2nd and 5 from the 21 a few plays later. Vick was scrambling, and then he ended up fumbling the ball, and it was recovered by Buffalo. So now Buffalo had the ball on the New York Jets 31 with about 7.5 minutes left in the first half. They wouldn't get too far, though, and Dan Carpenter would come out to attempt a 53-yard field goal, and it was up and it was good, and the Bills now led 24-7 over the Jets. So now the Jets took over on their own 26. They would bring the ball to midfield and into Buffalo territory, and on 1st down from the 47, Michael Vick scrambled for a 24-yard run, and that brought the ball to the 23. Chris Ivory then picked up 9 yards to bring the ball into the red zone, and it was 2nd and 1 from the 14, and then an incomplete pass brought up 3rd and 1, and Percy Harvin then ran on an end around for 9 yards to bring the ball to the 5, and it was 1st and goal. Then after a penalty of roughing the passer, it was 1st and goal from the 2, and Chris Ivory punched it in from 2 yards out, and it was now a 10-point game with the score 24-14 Buffalo over New York. So now Buffalo would take over on their own 20, and they would go 3 and out, and so the Jets got the ball back with about 30 seconds left in the first half. They had it on their own 42. They brought it into Buffalo territory, and they got it to the 37, and with 4 seconds left, Nick Folk came out to attempt the 55-yard field goal, and it was up and it was good. And now it was 24-17 as the Jets scored on the final play of the first half to bring the game within a touchdown. So at halftime, the score was Buffalo 24, New York 17. The Bills would start things off in the second half, and on the first play of the second half, Kyle Orton was sacked for a 6-yard loss by Couples. So then they would end up punting the ball after going 3 and out, and now New York took over, but they would go 3 and out as well. So now Buffalo got the ball back with about 10 minutes left in the third. They had it on the New York 27, and they would end up bringing it into the red zone, but then Dan Carpenter would end up having to come out to attempt a 36-yard field goal, and it was up and it was good, and now the Bills led by 10 with the score 27-17. So now the Jets took over with about 8.5 minutes left in the third quarter. They were backed up against their own end zone with the ball on the Jets' 3-yard line. They would end up going 3 and out as they punted from the end zone. And so now the Buffalo Bills would get the ball, but they would go 3 and out as well, as we saw a lot of defense during this stretch. So now with about 5 minutes left in the third, the Jets had the ball on their own 14-yard line. And after a bunch of really mess penalties and incompletions and nonsense, it would end up being 1st and 23 from the Jets 14. Of course, that was 6 plays later, and on the first down and 23 from the 14, Michael Vick dropped back to pass, and he was sacked and he fumbled, and the Bills recovered on the Jets' 10-yard line. So now the Buffalo Bills had the ball in the red zone to begin their drive, but they wouldn't get anywhere, and Dan Carpenter would come out to kick a 29-yard field goal, and it was now 30-17, Buffalo over New York. So now the Jets took over with about a minute left in the third. They had the ball on their own 20, and then after an incomplete pass and then a 1-yard run by Vick, it was now 3rd and 9 from the 21. Michael Vick dropped back to pass, and he was intercepted by Cersei, and Buffalo took over with just seconds left in the third quarter, and they brought the quarter to a close with a 4-yard run by Dixon. So after 3, it was Buffalo 30, New York 17. And to start the fourth quarter, the Buffalo Bills started off on the New York 10-yard line. And on the second play of the third quarter, it was 3rd and 8 from the 12. And Kyle Orton hit Chandler for a 12-yard touchdown pass that put the Bills up by 20 with the score now 37-17. The Jets now took over with about 14 minutes left in this game, and they would go 3 and out. Buffalo then got the ball with about 12 minutes left in the fourth. They had it on their own 29. They brought the ball towards midfield, but then they got backed up with an offensive holding penalty, so it was 2nd and 13 from the Buffalo 39. Kyle Orton dropped back to pass, and he hit Sammy Watkins for a 61-yard touchdown pass that made the score 43-17, Buffalo over New York. So now the Jets would take over with less than 10 minutes left in the game. They had the ball on their own 20, and they would march down the field, and they would get into the red zone, and they got all the way down to the Buffalo 3-yard line, and that's where Powell punched it in for the 3-yard touchdown run that made it back to a 20-point game with the score 43-23 after the 2-point conversion failed. So now Buffalo would take over, and they would run out the clock, and this game would come to a close with Kyle Orton taking the knee in the victory formation. And the final score, Buffalo 43, New York 23. And the Bills are now 5-3 on the season, and the Jets are 1-7. And in this game, Kyle Orton was 10 for 17 with 238 passing yards and 4 touchdowns. Michael Vick was 18 for 36 with 153 passing yards and 1 interception. Geno Smith was just 2 for 8 with 5 yards passing and 3 interceptions. The leading rusher in this game was Michael Vick with 69 yards off of 8 carries. Chris Ivory had 43 yards off of 13 carries and 2 touchdowns. And Dixon was the leading rusher for Buffalo with 44 yards off of 22 carries. The leading receiver in this game was Sammy Watkins with 157 yards off of just 3 receptions, one of which was for a touchdown. And on defense, the leading tackler was Bradham for Buffalo with 11 tackles. Harris had 10 tackles for New York. The Bills had 4 sacks, and so did the Jets, as Bryant, Wynn, and Williams each had, well, Bryant and Wynn had 1 sack. Kyle Williams had 1.5, and Super Mario had a half sack. and that was for Buffalo. And for the Jets, Richardson had a half sack, Couples had 1.5 sacks, Wilkerson had a half sack, as did Calvin Pace, and Wilson had 1 sack. And for interceptions, it was all Buffalo. They had 4 of them. Cersei, Williams, Gilmore, and Brown each had picks. So the final score, Buffalo 43, New York 23.